Hello, welcome to the final lecture in this lecture series in the course of Housing Policy and Planning. We have covered so far all the necessary elements in the housing policy and planning. Considering the time limit and the time and the scope, maybe that we have touched upon all the subjects one by one, but there are few areas where maybe we could not go into much details. So, it will be good that based on your interest and based on your preparation, maybe later on you can take up all those subjects. So, in this final lecture, what we will do, we will just briefly summarize the discussions and the issues we touched in the several lectures, last the series of lectures, and then we will conclude the course with a way forward for the future. So, in the beginning we started the course keeping the objective in the mind that housing for all was a very distant dream for India after the independence, but now we are in a position to take that as a immediate target and objective to fulfill. So, we started discussion this vision of housing for all for our course. Keeping that slogan in our mind, we started taking the situation of the housing in our country. So, the first discussion was focused on the housing situation of our country, which is kind of 1 out of 10% does not have livable house, and this situation is much more severe in urban areas. We told you that in urban areas 1 out of 6 person does not have livable house. In rural areas 1 out of 12 people does not have livable house. So, as a matter of that fact, to fulfill this housing gap, we have tried several programs and schemes after the independence. So, we discussed the programs and schemes after the independence, specifically 1950 to 2010. The basic observation on these programs and these schemes was that a broad shifting in the approach by the government of India from provider to enabler to facilitator. That was the basic shifting in the approach by the government of India, which we observed. So, this was the second part we discussed. After the discussion of the programs and schemes, we identified few areas of the concern or the issues which were basically the bottleneck and barrier which were creating hindrance to achieve housing for all. So, what are those issues? The first issues were land, then finance vis-a-vis the affordability, and then we discussed the issues like technology, like the older and archaic technology which delivers housing in a very slow pace, that is a issue. So, this after identifying these issues, we discussed the programs and schemes, few of the programs and schemes which conducted in last 10 or 15 years in little more details. For example, we discussed JNNURM, then Rajiv Awas Yojana, and then we also discussed Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana in the modern times. So, basic learning point from the JNNURM and after that till Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana is that all the development scheme in the housing and the infrastructures were coupled and integrated with reforms. So, that was a very important part with the policy which we learned. So, then we discuss the reforms one by one, like land reforms, financial reform. In the land reform, some of the important reform was taking back Urban Land Ceiling and Regulation Act (ULSRA), then land banking, then Land Acquisition Act. We have revised the Land Acquisition Act. The objective of the land reform was to make land available for bigger projects. Then in the financial reform, we discussed that permission of 100% FDI by the government of India in the housing sector was permitted. That was a very major financial reform. Then it was creation of housing finance institution and making rules and regulation for streamlining the housing finance. That was another part of the reform. After discussing the reform part, then we shifted to discussion on the few more programs like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which is Awas Yojana. In the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the basic objective is to housing for all, and it is lying on the 4 pillars, different 4 pillars, including interest subsidy, including affordable housing in partnership. All those different aspects are there. And not only that, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana is also having another submission which is called technology submission. In the technology submission, we have seen that they have identified total 16 technology which will bring a faster delivery option for the housing in our country. So, that is a major reform in India, whatsoever we have discussed. Then we discussed the housing finance and affordability. In the affordability part, we discussed that traditionally, classically, affordability towards housing was calculated based on the income, but nowadays affordability is calculated based on a floor area based. So, from income based approach to the floor area based approach, that is the major shift in the affordability. So, this policy element, after discussing the policy element and reform element, and along with this we discussed the contemporary policies like national urban housing and habitat policy, and before that we also discussed national housing policy, and recently conducted national urban rental housing policy. So, in these policies we learned that how these reforms are integrated. So, in this module we basically discussed the enabling parameters, the prerequisite parameters for creating a better plan for the housing. So, this is a broad guidelines and direction for creating the planning parameters in housing. Then we started discussion on the planning. We started the discussion in the planning with multi-level planning in India. We told that we have the central government, state government and local government, 3-tier government structure, and every layer of the government there are various types of planning exercise which is done. For example, at the central level and state level 5-year plans are made, and similarly in the urban local body level and the district level the perspective plan and development plans, all those plans are prepared. Then we discuss the city planning. city and regional planning. Under that, basically we focused on the physical planning part, the spatial planning, which is nothing but land use, its breakup, its parameters, how we explain the land use, how the land use plan is prepared, and out of the land use we also learned infrastructure and also development control. So, land use, infrastructure, development controls, all these are basic tools and component of the city and regional planning. So, basically we are coming from a macro level or whole to the part approach, and after the city and regional planning we discuss the housing strategy for every city. And in this housing strategy we discussed that how in a city the population and housing can be projected, and as per the projection how we can allocate the land and allocate the resources as per the various zones around the city. So, that part we discussed spatially how it is done. And after discussing the broad methodology of the housing strategy, then we discussed the infrastructure in details, how the infrastructure planning could be done. Planning, we told that it is divided into two parts, physical and social. And then we discussed planning for each typology of the houses, like so we discussed this as per the classification, like we discussed formal housing, informal housing and organic housing. So, under the formal housing, basically group housing, plotted housing, cooperative housing, institutional housing, all those elements we discussed. In the informal category we discussed slum, squatters, unauthorized settlements, all these elements. In the organic category the traditional houses in the city, how we conserve the city core area and the urban villages, all those elements we discussed under this. So, after discussing the typology we also discussed the elements like disaster management and its relation with housing, how we can integrate the disaster management in every level of the housing planning and strategy. And after that we also discussed the development part, development of the housing project, how we can formulate a project, and role of the developer in this developer, and what is the relation of the housing development and the real estate development. We touched upon the element like housing management, so though our main focus is housing planning and strategy, we discuss the development and housing management, so that you at least get some practical orientation that how these are developed and managed. And after the housing management we discuss the role of various stakeholders and how the actions can be taken at every level. So, this coverage of whole course will enable you to appreciate the policy prescriptions, policy direction, how the policy has evolved from a typical subsidy paradigm to a market paradigm, how the policy has enabled so many things, the land, finance, the institutions, everything, so that a market is created which can deliver more housing. So, you will be able to appreciate the policy paradigm in the current context, and then you will be able to make a plan for any city or for any area based on the planning paradigm, housing strategy, the infrastructure planning, and all typology. Now, maybe that within our discussion and discourses you did not get much robust case studies and examples, though we tried to give relevant case studies and examples and references, but definitely we will try to provide a few more resources during your study part and examination timing. That time we will be giving few more references. Now, let us discuss after that what are the future of housing planning and policy. So, having discussed this, we discussed based on our existing knowledge on housing policy and the planning part. Now, for the future reference, as a enthusiastic and inquisitive participant, let us identify few areas where the future lies, and we can develop our interest and we can study more if we require. So, for the future of housing planning, the first very important part will be the possible changes in the market based housing supply. Probably we all have understood and realized that the public agency, the government based paradigm giving subsidies and cost subsidies may not be sustainable for long. So, we have to create a vibrant market, and that market will be efficient enough to deliver more number of housing, more number of affordable housing in a competitive manner. Right now we are running a combination of the market based housing and also subsidy based and scheme and program based housing delivery by the government. So, in future the more and more housing delivery will be done from the market. So, we have to take a lesson from this discussion that how we can develop ourselves also with the adequate knowledge and skills to understand the market, how the market understands and market dynamics influences the housing delivery and its effect on the housing implementation. So, that is the first thing we have to understand. Second is the magic of in our country, you know, the per capita land is very less comparing to few other countries, and the population concentration and density is much higher than any other European and Western country. But we never tried the land management. The future lies in the land management. If you are interested, if you can develop a competency on the land management and can create a model and offer to the city and city authority and the decision maker, which will enable the policy maker, decision maker to envisage that and to plan for the city a better housing community, a better housing blocks or better housing projects, that will be the future for our city. Right now what we are managing and what we are doing is a combination of naturally available land parcels in the city, and whenever it is required we are just acquiring land, or we are in some part of the country we are readjusting the land as per the acts, but future lies in the land management. So, we have to go into the next level of the land management. We will try to offer future courses in the land management also, but if you are interested you can see several case studies from international as well as national, because this is the future. And then the technology. The housing delivery in India by the traditional construction method, traditional technology is by and large dependent on the labor and the manual based construction. But as I told you that in the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and technology mission, the basic thrust is to bring new technologies which will be able to deliver housing in a faster rate. So, several such technologies are being developed by the government of India. Several IITs and research organizations are earmarked for developing technologies. The demonstration projects are being constructed by government of India. So, in near future you will find that the whole paradigm of the current technology will change. So, you have to be competent enough to understand, to appreciate, to recognize the new technology, the language of the new technology, the design language of the new technology, otherwise you will not be able to deliver in the new paradigm. So, in the new technology paradigm, so the paradigm shift is from on-site paradigm from a off-site paradigm and using prefabrication. And also green technology. The another part I must tell you is that for as a part of the sustainability, that green energy and sustainability aspect will be very much inherent and integrated with the housing development. In future you might see that all the housing projects which are coming up may be mandatorily having the green rating, mandatorily having the green energy, though we did not go into that detail in this course because this course is not focused on the housing design part, but I tell you that in future wherever we go at the project level making the project formulation for housing, the green energy and sustainability will be very inherent part of the housing. And lastly, you have to polish your knowledge and skill based on all the possible changes in the future housing scenario. So, this is the way forward for the future. So, if you follow this way forward, I hope that the presence of the professionals like you will be very much prominent and you will be able to contribute for our country so that our country can achieve housing for all within a stipulated time 2022. In this junction, I must appreciate that government of India by taking the overall goal housing for all by 2022 has given us the mandate for all of us irrespective of our background. We may be architects, we may be engineers, we may be planners, sociologists or geographer or economist. So, all of us we have to work together to bring this change in our country. So, having said that, I tell you few words about our the course conduct so that you can follow these courses. So, regular interactions through the online forums will be available. If you find any questions, any difficulty, any clarification required during any lectures, you can definitely contact us in future also, and for the reference reading you can read those reference in future. So, we will be available for any clarification and query so that you understand the course, internalize the course, and in future you can contribute and do something for the course. So, I wish you all the best for your active participation in the course and taking the examination and supporting the overall NPTEL program run by the government of India, Ministry of Human Resource and Development. And I congratulate all of you and thank all of you on behalf of IIT Roorkee community, and from myself I thank you for participation in the course. Thank you very much.